Hey everybody, I hope you've been well and sorry for the time away, but life is life and all of that, so let's go ahead and just get right into it, yeah? Today we're going to be covering Lawrence v. Texas, which is everyone's favorite topic, same-sex sodomy. It's the next in one of those privacy cases that we've been covering before, so things like contraception and marriage and abortion, and we're back after Bowers to another same-sex sodomy case. So let's go ahead and just hop right on into it and see just what happened in this instance. So when the police received a complaint of a weapons disturbance in Houston, Texas, they went to the home of the individual named here, Lawrence, and entered his apartment. When they entered, they found Lawrence and another man named Gardner rocking it out like a hobby horse, and arrested both men for engaging in deviant sexual behavior, namely sodomy. The two were arrested, charged, and convicted before a justice of the peace. Now, the particular law that they were charged and convicted under has specific language that actually does matter later for the court's analysis, and personally I find it quite entertaining. It's that a person commits an offense if he engages in deviant sexual intercourse with another individual of the same sex. Now notice, they single out same-sex interaction. It's not sodomy in and of itself or deviant sexual interaction in and of itself. It is tied specifically to the same-sex nature of that interaction. Now, Lawrence, at the time that this was going on, made what you would assume was the equal protection argument under the 14th Amendment, which was swiped aside by the court. They weren't interested. Now, it should also be noted, and it becomes again important later, that both individuals in this instance, so Lawrence and Gardner, were both adults. Both were in private in Lawrence's home, and all activities were consensual. Now, it actually does matter why I'm bringing it up later. So with all of the standard appeals, we then end up at the Supreme Court. And we start the Supreme Court discussion by looking at the long line of cases that we've been covering on this channel. Everything from Eisenstadt to Griswold to Roe to Bowers, which was actually the controlling case in this particular instance because it dealt with similar activities in a similar situation at the federal level. Now, in hearing Lawrence's 14th Amendment arguments, the court took a basic look at liberty itself and what that would end up meaning. And the court found that the concept of liberty presumes that there's an autonomy of self that includes things like your freedom of thought and belief and expression, and yes, even certain intimate conduct. When looking to the particular law, both in this case, Lawrence, and in Bowers, that controlling case we covered before, the court said, yeah, the argument for the statutes is that they purport to do nothing more than to prohibit a particular sexual act, so sodomy. But the thing is that the penalty and the purpose of the actual statutes, it's far more reaching than just that. Basically, such a law, such a prohibition, touches on what is the most private and intimate of human conduct, sexual behavior, and it even implicates the most private and intimate of human areas, the home, and specifically the bedroom. It's not the sexual conduct that they're actually trying to prohibit. It's the control of a personal relationship that the statute is trying to control. In doing so, it's failing to recognize that whether or not a particular relationship is actually entitled to recognition under the law, it's within the liberty of the individuals to choose whether or not to engage in that activity, and they should be able to do so without being punished. Taking that into consideration, the court then basically says that it's sufficient for us, the court, to acknowledge that adults are free to choose to enter into a relationship within the confines of their home, in their private lives, and to retain their dignity as free people in our country. And that's why I made a point of specifying that Lawrence and Gardner were adults engaging in consensual activity at home alone. Now, like I said, the court took a look at the fact that Bowers was the controlling case in this instance. It was precedent. And so they set their eyes very squarely on that case and basically tore it apart like a pack of really hungry hyenas.
Cactus butt? But we gotta finish the job.
The first thing they did was take a look at the discussion in Bowers about the history of things like anti-sodomy laws and anti-homosexuality laws that the Bowers court had cited in its justification for its decision. And what they noted, and what the Bowers court failed to mention, was that the majority of the prosecutions were related to things like force, actions against minors, or actions that were conducted in public places, or that just weren't enforced at all. Failing to take those factors into consideration, the court in Bowers ended up actually overstating the prohibition itself, in effect making it seem as if the state was going after homosexual activity or same-sex sodomy itself far more often than it actually was. And the court wanted to make very certain that people understood its position, and so they went so far as to say that Bowers was not correct when it was originally decided, and it wasn't correct at the time that the Lawrence decision was made. And as a result, it ought not remain binding precedent, and they explicitly overruled it in their decision. And specifically looking at things like equal protection under the law, the court was pretty clear when they said that where homosexual conduct is made criminal by the law of the state, the declaration of that in and of itself is sufficient, that it invites discrimination against homosexual people both in the public and the private sphere. And if you remember, the language in the Texas statute specifically targeted homosexual individuals, not sodomy itself, but homosexual deviant sexual behavior, which was in this instance targeted toward the sodomy. So then looking toward the precedent, the court said that there are two propositions that are made abundantly clear. First, the fact that the governing majority in a particular state has traditionally viewed any particular practice as immoral, that's not a good enough reason to uphold a law prohibiting the practice. So in short, just because people disapprove doesn't mean that's a good enough reason for the government to stop you. And second, they take a look at the fact that individual decisions made by married people concerning things like physical intimacy, even where it's not intended to produce offspring, is a form of liberty in and of itself protected by the Due Process Clause. And then if you apply the basic concepts from things like Eisenstadt, which got you contraception for unmarried people, you get the same sort of concept, the same sort of protection in this instance for unmarried people as well as married individuals, which means that for Lawrence and Gardner, the ability to choose your physical relationship, even where kids can't be produced, is a liberty interest under the Due Process Clause. And as a result, the Texas law was struck down, and Bowers, the case, was explicitly overruled. So Lawrence went ahead and just took care of a couple of things all at once. So let me know what you think about the decision down below. Did the court get it right? Is the analysis correct? Or if not, why? I'd love to hear your reasoning. But until we're together again, I hope everyone is well.